the word I pick is like monumental, because it's a monumental scale. And that psychologically to the person interacting with it does a couple different things. And it's almost like it does them all in rapid succession. Like the immediate reaction is shock, like, oh my God, my head is so big, and is anyone looking? And can you, what does my complexion look like? I had no idea I actually look like that, kind of thing. And then there's, laughter, and you're laughing about it, and you're joking with your friends, whoever might be there, and oh my gosh, I can't believe that. And then that's almost inevitably, and shortly thereafter, this incredibly like contemplative moment to an extent where you're seeing yourself at that scale and in the context of public space and thinking, even with everything that's going on in the world right now, and who we give homage to, and who we memorialize, and what are statues, and what is public space, and who do we aggrandize and give homage to, and things like that. It puts all of that into question as well, and maybe like, inspires people to think of their own capacity to be monumental, if you will.
Sure. Hello, and welcome to Say Hi to the Future, a podcast aimed at highlighting the human side of ingenuity. My name is Ken Tenser, CEO of SpyderWorks. With me today are Matthew Mohr, Associate Professor of Design and Advertising at the Columbus College of Art and Design. And he's the creator of As We Are, a 14-foot, three-dimensional, universal human head made from ribbons of ultra-bright LED screens. Also joining are Jeff Grantz, Project Lead, and Don Brown, Executive Director on As We Are. Like this video if you enjoy our show, and subscribe to our channel. Leave us with a comment of who we should interview next. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show. Well, welcome. We have Matthew Mohr today, Jeff Grantz, and Don Brown. Welcome to Say Hi to the Future.
Thank you. Yeah, so glad to be here. Looking forward to this all week. I've been really excited about this. It's a great opportunity.
Good. No, I have too. I mean, let me address the elephant of the room, and then we can sort of build up to how this came to be. As We Are, and I describe it in the intro, a 14-foot 3D universal human head made from ribbons of ultra-bright LED screens. Matthew, is this something you just wake up one morning and say, I just have to build this?
I wish it were the case. It was the result of a lot of research and a lot of looking at technology and what was happening in technology, and interviewing stakeholders and end users, and thinking about what would be a great solution. But yes, at the end of the day, creativity is what gets it done.
And what is the purpose of this universal human head? How do people experience it? What do they walk away with when they experience it?
Well, it's an end-to-end experience. Of course, there's the initial impression of seeing the sculpture, unbeknownst to most people, but word's gotten out that there's a photo booth in the back of the neck, and you walk into the photo booth, you sit down, there are 29 cameras surrounding you. You use an interface that helps you navigate the process of having your photo taken. And in about a minute and a half, your photo is displayed on the head. So you're able to experience the photo process. You move out of the head, you stand in front of it, and then suddenly you see your head on the giant head. And I use that colloquially, but yeah, that's more or less the short form of the expression. It's a very I've seen people get very excited about it. Some people laugh. I've seen teenagers cry. It's an art experience. It's a lot of people think it's going to be fun, but it can be very jarring to see yourself that large on a 14-foot head. So
very interesting. So there are three of you here today, and I'm sure that there were many more than three people to help make this happen. But Jeff, Don, talk to me about the project and how the three of you work together.
We were approached by Matthew early on in the context of the project, and it was funny because I produce festivals in and around the East Coast, which largely rely on 3D projection mapping onto architectural facades. But a few years prior, we had done, ironically, large projection mapped face. And so I'm ironically, when I saw the image that Matthew had sent of this LED head, or proposed LED head, I was probably one of the rare people who could say, hey, I've done something at least similar to that before. Different technology, different context, and different scale altogether and level of execution. But that became one of the mediums that we used to test and to vet out the project early on, was to take the concept of, you know, a three-dimensionalized monumental scale head, and we made it out of foam, and we looked at and validated against the LED technologies that were available, because the reality is it's not one LED display, it's 24 LED displays that are individually stacked on top of each other, with even furthermore than that, you know, something like 3,600 individual LED custom manufactured modules that are 1 inch wide and approximately 6 inches tall, and provide the ability to do a tightly faceted curve, which conforms to the contours that, you know, Matthew had developed for the head shape. But you know, and even the idea of a universal head, I think, was an interesting, you know, it's an interesting statement unto itself. You know, how do you homogenize a human head? But we tried to approach it with Matthew, and with the understanding we really wanted to do right by this and not apply any prejudice towards what a universal human head looks like. And we found scientific studies that had been done for the sake of actually developing protection gear, and something like 3,000 or 4,000 human heads had been scanned in full 3D, and all the dimensions and contours of which had been captured, and it was across all the different ethnic profiles and backgrounds and such. And we were able to literally apply all of this mathematical data and create an algorithm that averaged it all out, and then spit out a range of human heads, taking into account all these contours and various dimensions and sizes, and actually give us a, you know, almost mathematical average of a human head. So that was an interesting even undertaking unto itself, to go to that level of consideration, you know, with a work of art, much less all the other technological difficulties in how do you then scan what I think to date is probably greater than 30 or 40,000 human heads, and make sure that the scanner doesn't break, you know, because it scans each of the heads within an assumed tolerance, imagining that the person isn't going to be taller than 7 feet tall, for example, and they're not going to be shorter than 3 feet tall or something along those lines. And we created an average scanning area, an assumed proportion of the head, which of course has been challenged time and time again on Halloween when someone comes in there with a Mickey Mouse face, and but the system does its best to take all of that into account, and then to basically recomposite a three-dimensional scan of a human head based on these 29 different individual images. It uses a process called photogrammetry. So, you know, we were just excited to, I say this, but I don't say it lightly, twofold, to have an artist with a bold and, you know, vision like this, and equally as important to have a client, Don and their team from the convention center, that were bold, almost crazy enough to, you know, pursue a project like this, and to put the resources and funding into making it happen. You know, that was a major leap of faith that I don't take lightly, because you know, in the wrong hands, it could have gone very wrong. But I think we worked really hard to do right by the concept, and emboldened by you know, the confidence that the convention center put in us and the creative team to make this thing work. We were not going to let them down.
So, Don, I didn't hear crazy, I heard crazy enough, which I think is a very important distinction. what made your team crazy enough to believe in a 14-foot 3D universal head? What were you looking for? What were you thinking?
We were looking for the wow factor. We wanted to give our visitors, and there are over 900,000 visitors that come to our convention center every year for conventions, for trade shows, for sporting events, for meetings, and we wanted them to remember their experience here. We compete with over 800 convention centers across North America for that foot traffic, for that business. And we compete with a dozen convention centers, a dozen of those 800 on a regular basis. So artwork, the addition of artwork in our artwork collection was an important addition to add to the visitor experience, to maximize that guest experience. And interactive art kicked it up a notch. And so we looked at As We Are, which marries art and technology and photography and allows the visitor to interact with it through that, by getting their photo taken, by adding that image to the gallery, of images that are kept here. And there are now almost 70,000 images in the collection, and they scroll by the visitor on a regular basis. It gives the visitor a terrific interactive experience. It also lets the visitor know that they're part of a diverse stream of people coming to our convention center and that live in our community. And so we wanted to share with them, convey the image of diversity. We wanted a large piece of artwork, and we got one 14 foot tall with As We Are, and we wanted an interactive piece of artwork, sculpture, that integrated technology and photography and artwork. And As We Are, the created by Matthew and Jeff, accomplished all those goals for us.
Well, I love that, Don, and I'll say that I've had the opportunity, my first book on innovation and entrepreneurship and ingenuity, they started coming out of my fingers about 15, 18 years ago. I've had the opportunity to speak on so many stages in so many countries, and you often walk into these conference or convention centers and there's a sterility about them, and you're going to think and to be engaged. So the way that I hear about what you are doing and engaging art and creating the experience, I just want to say thanks, because I think it's a wonderful approach to moving a building from an experiential day.
We want visitors to remember their stay here, and we felt that filling our walls with artwork and filling our halls with sculpture would make an impression on visitors that sterile white walls would not. And so it would separate us from other convention centers across North America.
Well, I look forward to seeing it on one of my next trips. I truly do. Matthew, coming back to one of the questions at the beginning, you said that it was almost a jarring experience for the individuals who were seeing their face in 14 feet. Is that one of the goals, to jar people through this expression of individuality overlaid on, this conventional or universal human figure?
It is an art experience, and I think any good art experience should be open-ended. So people have preconceptions, but ideally they should approach it with an open mind and do the work themselves to understand what it's all about. To me, there was the interactivity that Don mentioned. There's something very wonderfully democratic. Each of those 70,000 portraits that are represented on the sculpture are people that have sat in that chair and had their photograph taken. So it's open to anybody from all walks of life. And interestingly, the portraits are displayed on an equal distribution of skin tone. So it's not only just about the the humanity, but the diversity that we honor here in Columbus. But there's also essentially what it is it begs the question about social media and how we put ourselves out onto social media, and it's asking about this change in society. Is this good? Is this bad? So we put our faces on Facebook or Instagram or whatnot, and we make that decision. Some of us do it every day. And so what it does is it basically magnifies that moment to epic proportions and puts it in a public space. So it's really asking the question, is this good for us? How is this changing us as a society, as possibly as a species? That's what it's all about.
No, I love that. And I love that build. And I love the reflectivity, if that's a word, that you are pulling out of people through the experience. Now, you're a very celebrated professor of design and advertising. I want to go back though, because I'm in the middle of my doctorate. Why I'm doing it now, I don't know. I woke up in my mid-50s, said, hey, I always wanted it. Tell me about how some of the thinkings, I know you went to Parsons, which is an incredible institution. How what you learned from your students helped to inform what you do now, how you brought this to life.
I mean, that's one of the joys of being involved in art and technology is there's so much happening everywhere all the time. Everything's advancing. And you build a good stew, right? There's all these influences and opportunities to learn that all get, oh my goodness, there's something beautiful about that, or there's something engaging about that. I remember being on Times Square in the 2000s and seeing the ABC studios on Times Square, and it's on a corner, and it's ribbons of LED screens that sort of meander around the building. And I remember that was actually just made quite an impression on me. It was actually done by the Disney Imagineers, were the architects of on that building. And interestingly, Jeff has worked with Disney, but just made that kind of an impression where my goodness, there's a beautiful form there. And how do they do that? And it's just, screens, but it's beyond screens. And there was clearly in the back of my mind where, using ribbons of screens to wrap around to create a three-dimensional form. I think that I don't think it was a conscious like, oh, there it is. It was just like, there's an opportunity there. And it's also about working with great people and students, being in a dynamic environment at Parsons. It was like Hogwarts. It was people that are so interested in technology and what you can communicate with it. And then Jeff is from RISD. I get the sense that it's the same environment there, right?
So Jeff, tell us a little bit about that, but also when I listened to Matthew talk about the experiential part of design, and Jeff, we have something very much like Illuminous in Toronto. We have a nighttime contemporary arts festival in our streets as well. And it's an incredible experience. So talk a little bit about that and how that works into what you've created here, because experiential arts culture, they're words that really do have to go together.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what was interesting for me about this project is that, as Matthew was saying, typically the social media aspect and the capturing of one's face and selfies and things like that, it's like, in a particular, in the context of the pandemic, it's like an isolated or insular event. These devices which were supposed to connect us actually maybe potentially do the inverse to an extent. And we have our lives and our ways of communicating, expressing, and even like spending the majorities of our day, relegated to this 3-inch by 6-inch screen. depending on which iPhone model you have. But what was interesting about this is that it challenged that not only just the form factor of that, but the presence of that being cyclical and being projected back into public space, so that could inherently be a shared experience and one that's immediate. And I think that that's something that is an interesting benefit to why an artist looks to employ technology within their work. It's like, yes, it can be, it's high tech or it's cool or whatever. But if you look at what it does well, is that it processes immense amount of information. It does things that nothing else can do. In this case, it, immediately in a matter of seconds composites 29 images to, create a texture mapped 3-dimensional, image that's then recomposited onto a 3D model and then displayed on this LED display. There's no other means or medium by which this could be accomplished, much less creating an interactive archive that could be curated to be representative of the diversity, not only of the visitors there at the convention center, but the people that live in the city and that come and to visit it. And so it's intended to be a shared experience, which I think is, art in a vacuum kind of isn't art, and in this particular case, I think that it's, a testament to the convention center for having not only selected, a monumental work or created a monumental work like this, but also the fact that they invested in and saw the talent that existed within their own city, as opposed to what I see most often being the case is, what renowned international this or that can we bring in to do an expression of our city? That to me seems absurd. Like an expression of the city should inherently be, expressive of the talent that already exists within it somehow. And so I'm proud of the fact that this piece did that and does that. I think another interesting observation that I've had since maybe the pandemic, and I did experience myself a little bit when I first scanned my head on this, is that there's something to be said. The word I pick is like monumental, because it's a monumental scale, and that psychologically to the person interacting with it does a couple different things. And it's almost like it does them all in rapid succession. Like the immediate reaction is shock, like, oh my God, my head is so big, and is anyone looking? And can you, what does my complexion look like? I had no idea I actually looked like that, kind of thing. And then there's, laughter, and you're laughing about it, and you're joking with your friends, whoever might be there, and oh my gosh, I can't believe that. And then that's almost inevitably, and shortly thereafter, this incredibly like contemplative moment to an extent where you're seeing yourself at that scale and in the context of public space and thinking, even with everything that's going on in the world right now, and who we give homage to and who we memorialize, and what are statues, and what is public space, and who do we aggrandize and give homage to, and things like that. It puts all of that into question as well, and maybe like inspires people to think of their own capacity to be monumental, if you will.
Sure. Well, I'm hearing a lot of passion, which is incredibly important to ingenuity and bringing experience to life. I'm hearing a lot of creativity, and Dawn, I've interviewed young artists, emerging artists in Columbus after we did the event with CCAD last year. We were lucky to meet an incredible array of young and emerging artists. What makes Columbus so open to art and experience? Because it just seems to be everywhere in abundance.
There is a thriving art community here. We have over 500 works of art in our collection now and on display public in the convention center and in the convention hotel connected to it. All of that art was created by local artists who live or work in Central Ohio. And again, we wanted to give visitors a flavor of the community they were in by seeing that local art, not by displaying art from the European masters or from the Asian masters, but or even the the Chicago and New York and Boston Masters. We wanted them to show the art, the capabilities of the art community here. And that's why we have invested so heavily in the collection of local art. Why here? I'm sure they're drawn by Matthew Mohr and his colleagues on the faculty at CCAD.
There's a lot of great stuff coming out of our program. Yes, for sure. It's an exciting time to be in Columbus, and there's so much happening here, and it's really also great to be among a collection of art by local artists. But the quality of the work is also extraordinary. Yeah, and I just have to say that it takes a belief in the community to bring it alive in that way. We have some wonderful architecture here. We have a thriving community, but when you bring art into the fore, where you make it, give it an opportunity to add to, and in some sense be the identity of the community. The people coming here from other cities see what's on the walls. They interact with as we are. They are left with an impression that this is a warm, inviting, diverse community that values art and other people.
Well, I think that's a wonderful position to be in, and I can see the synergy between the three of you in terms of how you think about community and engaging people. And I know that especially now coming out of the pandemic, arts and culture were hit very hard. If we weren't allowed in museums, we couldn't see what existed there. So I think it's incredible. And I really wish you all the best with what you're doing, and Don, with what is happening there with the collection. I think it's been an incredible story. So our time is coming to an end. I do have one other question. And Matthew, let me see if I research this right, because I always find one thing that surprises me or intrigues me. Do I have it right that you sold one of your early companies to NASA?
That is true, yes. I was early in the game in the web design business, and managed to sell that to a NASA subcontractor, and worked on base in Cleveland. There are 7 bases all over the country. And I worked at the Cleveland's NASA Glenn Research Center, and they scanned my retina and did the interview family members and whatnot, just to and made me sign a document that I was not going to share what I saw for 5 to 10 years or so. But
it's great. We don't need to share. I don't want you to. I just thought that was fascinating. I've got to be honest, I've never met somebody who said that sold their business to NASA. So I know that's a little bit of a diversion in our conversation, but it just kind of intrigued me.
I do want to say that working on As We Are was one of the best experiences of my career. I can't tell you how much fun it was. Even the challenges were fun because as Jeff said, the convention center board was so dedicated and supportive, and Jeff's team, unbelievably talented people. Just really, we defined the borders of the project, and everybody got it. They contributed their best, and it's a testament that people have embraced it so much that it looks pretty much what was originally proposed. It was an act of joy. This really was an act of joy. This was so great.
Matthew, thank you so much for that. Jeff, thank you for being on today and for being part of it. And Don, thank you for having the courage to engage in this and for embracing arts and culture at the convention center. I mean, it's a wonderful, again, tribute to the community and to your team and the work that you do within it. And for the people who are listening today on Spotify or Apple, you can also go to YouTube, and we will be showing some pictures of As We Are in the exhibit, in that wonderful 14-foot universal human head for everyone to enjoy and understand what we've been talking about. So thank you again.